Hello everyone, what is up? Welcome back to another episode of Killer Instinct, you guys. Thank you so much for joining me here today. If you're new here, hi, my name is Savannah and I'm your host of Killer Instinct. And before we get started, make sure you go ahead and hit that subscribe button. That way you never miss an episode. We post weekly here on the podcast every single Wednesday. You guys are not going to want to miss it. And we also upload the video version onto YouTube on Wednesdays as well. So make sure you are subscribed. And with that being said, you guys, happy 2025. It is a whole new year, and I am so excited to embark on this year with you guys and to see what all of 2025 has to offer. I am wishing all of us just a happy and joy-filled new year. I hope you guys had a fun holiday season, and I am so excited to kick off this new year together. Now, we do have a couple things to go over before we get into this case. The first being, I don't know if you may or may not have noticed, we have new artwork. Killer Instinct has gotten brand new artwork, brand new cover art. I thought, what better way to bring in the new year than to completely rebrand Killer Instinct in and of itself? We have a whole new set of artwork, and so you might have been a little bit confused when you clicked on the episode today, but that was not a mistake. We just have new artwork. So I hope you guys enjoy it, and I hope you like it as much as I do. Now, the second thing I wanted to talk about is basically just kind of getting a temperature check on where you guys are at with the future of Killer Instinct when it pertains to something that we did throughout the entirety of last year, which is monthly themed episodes. I know that this is something that you guys really enjoyed. I really enjoyed it as well, just because not only was it exciting and fun to kind of guess the new themes of the month and to see what themes were going to be next, and it was great to hear from you guys as a way to like connect with you and to really have a little bit of structure going into 2024 and really throughout the entirety of it. If I'm being honest, I didn't really anticipate and expect myself to do the themed months every single month for the entirety of the year. But now that we are in a whole new year, I kind of wanted to see what you guys thought. If you wanted the monthly themes to continue, or if you wanted to switch things up a little bit, if you wanted to go back to the non-themed months, the non-themed episodes, maybe we do a little bit of half and half. Maybe on particular months we do a theme and maybe some we don't. I'm really just curious to know what you guys want to hear out of me and this podcast going forward for the rest of the year. So definitely let me know in the comments below. I'll be reading through those and really just getting a gauge as to what you guys want to listen to. So with that being said, as you can tell by the title of today's episode does not fall under a theme. I thought let's just start off the new year with a new episode and we can kind of go from there in regards to if we do themed months or not. But in regards to today's episode, this might be a case you are somewhat familiar with. It was plastered all throughout the media, especially in the later half of 2024. And this is the case that has been coined as the Black Swan murder. And it's also the murder of Douglas Benefield. And so that is what we are going to be talking about today. I'm really curious to hear your guys' opinion on this case. From what I understand, people either have very strong opinions on both sides of this. They have very strong opinions leaning one way or another, and I'm very curious to know where you fall in that. So with that being said, let's jump right on into it today. Douglas Benefield was born on October 2nd, 1961 in Palo Alto, California, to his parents, Johnny and Suzanne Benefield. He grew up with his family in Huntsville, Alabama, where he graduated from Huntsville High School in 1980. During high school, Doug excelled specifically in wrestling. He only lost one match in the 7th grade and then proceeded to never lose another match in junior high. He was on the varsity wrestling team for all 4 years of high school and was in the top 10 level of the state. After graduating from high school, Doug went on to attend Texas A&M University, which was a little bit of a tradition. His father had gone there and his brothers had gone there, and so naturally he did as well. While he was there, he got his degree in biology and graduated in 1984. Alongside his biology major, Doug was also very passionate about art. He was incredibly talented when pertaining dabbling to anything that was art related. He used to paint murals on buildings and also designed logos for different brands and businesses while he was in college. After college, Doug went on to join the Navy and completed aviation school to become a naval flight officer. He completed flight school and served as a Navy pilot for 3 years in San Diego, California. Afterwards, he served an additional 3 years as a mine warfare instructor in Charleston, South Carolina, and he retired from the Navy as a lieutenant commander in 1999. After his retirement, Doug did stay in Charleston, and he actually opened up a restaurant there for several years while simultaneously working as a security and communication technology consultant for the U.S. government. And it was while he was in Charleston that Doug met a woman named Renee. The two began dating and fell head over heels in love with each other. In 2001, they welcomed their daughter Eva into the world and lived happy as a family of 3. But sadly, in 2015, Renee actually passed away from a heart attack while Doug was out of town. This obviously left Doug to be a single father and left Doug and Eva to really navigate through this next chapter together. And Doug and Eva grew extremely, extremely close. Eva has said that her dad was her best friend. He was the one that she could go to with any sort of problem, whether it was a boy issue or a friend issue or a school issue. He was always there to help her however he could. And the two had a very, very tight-knit relationship. Now, something that really helped Doug navigate through this incredibly difficult time in his life was leaning into his faith. Doug was a devoted Christian, and every morning he would start his day off by reading the Bible. He would also send his daughter Eva a Bible verse every single morning, and he also ended the day doing that as well. Doug was also very dedicated into health and fitness. He was incredibly into wellness. He was very active. He loved doing CrossFit. He really did remain very, very active throughout his life. So now let's jump to 2016, and this is about 9 months after Doug's first wife, Renee, had passed away. And it was in August of 2016 that Doug met a new woman named Ashley Byers. Now, Ashley, she grew up being a ballerina. She graduated from the Maryland Youth Ballet, and she was also a swimsuit model. Now, in August of 2016, Doug and Ashley met when she was 24 and he was 54. They met in Palm Beach, Florida, while Ashley was working at a campaign office that supported Donald Trump during that election year. They met at a dinner party and got to talking, and afterwards, Ashley showed Doug her conceal and carry weapon that she carried in her bra. That was really like the conversation starter that really got them talking. So this sparked conversation, and the two were incredibly drawn to one another. So much so that they actually got married 13 days after they met. Yes, days. 13 days later, they got married. Now, no one in Doug's family knew about the marriage or the wedding or that Doug was getting married. And Doug's family said that that was because if Doug were to tell them, anyone on his side of the family would have talked him out of it. Anyone would have tried to tell him that this wasn't a good idea and that he should wait a little bit longer before jumping back into another marriage. Doug's daughter Eva didn't even know that her dad was getting married again. But nonetheless, they did. And after they got married, Ashley moved to Charleston to live with Doug, and together they founded the American National Ballet, which was a ballet company in Charleston that is now closed. In March of 2018, Ashley and Doug had their own child together. They had a daughter named Emerson. So Doug was a full-on girl dad. Now, pertaining to their relationship, Doug and Ashley's, it was tumultuous. It was a roller coaster, to say the least. It was toxic, and there were many people in Doug's life that had hesitations about this relationship from the very beginning, especially his daughter Eva. She was very worried about her dad and worried about the age gap, worried about how quickly they got married. Ashley was only 9 years older than Eva, but again, Eva was supportive of her dad nonetheless. So this case begins on September 27th of 2020, and 911 dispatchers in Lakewood Ranch, Florida, received a 911 call from a man who claimed that his neighbor had run over to his house. He said that the woman was frantic and hysterical, telling her neighbor, quote unquote, "He attacked me and I shot him." Now, that neighbor that this man was referring to was 29-year-old Ashley Benefield. When authorities first arrived onto the scene, Doug was still inside of the home and Ashley was at her neighbor's. First responders rushed into the home and found Doug lying on the bedroom floor, bleeding out. First responders dragged him into the living room to administer CPR, and they then put him in an ambulance and rushed him over to the hospital. Doug was shot twice. He was shot once in his leg and once in his arm, but the bullet that shot his arm had traveled into his chest cavity, and unfortunately, Doug succumbed to his injuries and passed away an hour after he arrived at the hospital. Now, like I said, Ashley was still at her neighbor's home, and she was instructed by the 911 dispatcher to walk outside with her hands in the air when police arrived on the scene, and she did exactly that. Police then escorted her and put her into the back of the police car. Now, while in the back of the police car, Ashley did agree to go down to the police station to speak with them, but the one condition that she had was that she wanted to see her daughter before she left. Now, you might be wondering why Ashley would be able to really negotiate contingencies on whether or not she would be able to go to the police station, but that's because from the very beginning, Ashley claimed that she shot Doug in self-defense. So because of her self-defense claim, it wasn't like she was arrested right there on the scene. So she agreed to go down to the police station and speak with authorities on the condition that she saw her daughter. Now, at the time of the shooting, Emerson, her daughter, was at the park that was down the street with Ashley's mom. So the two of them were at the park, but police were able to get her mom and her daughter back to the home so that Ashley could see Emerson before she left. And how that worked was Emerson was walked up to the cop car and she could not see inside of it, but Ashley could see out of it. That's because of the tinted windows. And so Ashley was able to see her daughter before she left, and then she was transported to the police station. Now, as police were processing the crime scene very shortly after Ashley left, they did get an unexpected visitor to the home, which was Ashley's therapist. Ashley's therapist was named Barbara Russell, and detectives have said that in all of their years of law enforcement, this was not something that they had seen, so it definitely stood out to them. Police have said that never once had they seen a therapist or a mental health specialist or a doctor of a victim or a potential suspect arrive on the scene after a crime, so they did believe that that was very, very strange. Now, while Ashley was in transit to the police station, her attorney actually arrived to the police department before Ashley did herself, and when the attorney was there, the attorney approached the detectives and said that they were the attorney for Ashley, but not only that, two other attorneys for Ashley were on their way. So that was going to be 3 attorneys for Ashley in total, which again did strike police as odd because why would she need 3 attorneys if she again was claiming self-defense? Now, when Ashley arrived at the police station and was brought into an interrogation room, police knew based off of that 911 call, like I said, that she was claiming self-defense, but Ashley refused to speak with authorities about what had actually happened. She refused to give a statement, and because she wasn't actually arrested, like I said, for reasons I had previously listed, she was allowed to leave the station that night, which she did. Now, after Ashley left is when police began digging into Ashley and Doug's relationship. And this is when they uncovered some troubling information. And just from the beginning, right out of the gate, I think it's important to tell you that there is so much he said, she said in this case. There is so much of both sides that are talking and conflicting. Both have very conflicting stories. There is some similarities in both of their stories. But again, at the end of the day, very much he said, she said. Now, for one, Ashley had confided in her therapist and said that immediately after marrying Doug, he became very abusive. Ashley claimed that Doug would push her into walls and he would scream at her and he would throw furniture at her, and even believed that Doug was poisoning her while she was pregnant. Ashley said that she believed this because she was a dancer and she knew her body very well, and she felt like she was more nauseous than she should have been while she was pregnant. She also believed this because Doug had purchased Ashley a birthday present of tea that was specifically for pregnant women. He got this tea specifically for Ashley. Ashley really liked tea, so it was basically the perfect birthday gift in his mind to Ashley. But when Ashley was gifted this, she became worried that this tea was Doug's way of poisoning her. She actually believed this so heavily that she brought the tea to the police department and asked to have the tea tested because she claimed that Doug was poisoning her with the tea. Now, police did test the tea, but it did not come back with having any sort of toxin, poison, or hazardous material in it whatsoever. So they told her this tea is safe. It's not being laced. There's no poison in it. But that was not the only accusation that Ashley had made towards Doug. Ashley's therapist claimed that Ashley told her that Doug had actually admitted to Ashley that he killed Renee. So not only is now Ashley believing that Doug is poisoning her, she's saying that Doug had admitted to poisoning Renee as well. Ashley told her therapist that Doug told her that he killed Renee and also said that he would never be arrested for it. And so, because of that, he could easily get away with killing her as well. Now, from Ashley's perspective, she claims that because Doug told her that he killed Renee, that he poisoned Renee, that is part of the reason she believes so heavily that he was poisoning her too. It made her extremely paranoid over the fact that he could kill her as well. Now, this became such a problem for Ashley that 8 weeks into her pregnancy, Ashley left her home and went to go stay with her mom. She ended up writing him a note and leaving the note at the house while he was at a work event, telling him that their marriage was over. She went on to explain in the note that Doug was possessive, manipulative, and controlling. She talked about the multiple times that she felt like her life was in danger. She told Doug in the note not to contact her or try to see her, because if he did, she would get the authorities involved. So after Ashley left, she went to go live with her mom in Florida, and she remained there throughout the duration of her pregnancy and through the birth of her daughter. She actually didn't even tell Doug when their daughter was born. Ashley's daughter was born 3 weeks prior to her due date, and this was right after Ashley had checked herself in to the Tampa General Hospital. And when she did this, she claimed that her unborn child had been exposed to heavy metals because her husband had poisoned her. But when they ran tests on Ashley, they did a bunch of labs on her. All of those labs came back normal. They did not show any heavy metal or any poison that was left in her bloodstream. When Emerson was born, Ashley had Doug kept off of the birth certificate, so his name was not on the birth certificate whatsoever, and she also filed to get a restraining order against him. And after their daughter was born, Ashley had gone forward and signed the two of them, Ashley and her daughter, up for these hyperbaric chamber treatments. They signed up for 26 treatments in total, and the purpose of these hyperbaric chamber treatments was to remove all of the toxins in their body. She was still convinced that both she and her daughter could still have these heavy metals or these toxins in their body. So she signed them up for these hyperbaric chamber treatments. And the company that did this actually said that Emerson, the daughter, was the youngest patient that they had ever had in these treatments. And in total, they spent 40 hours in the chamber together. So all of this information was handed over to the authorities. But along with that, detectives also uncovered several different complaints that had been filed from over the years. So all of this information from Ashley's side is painting a picture of a man, Doug, who is incredibly violent, who is abusive, who is manipulative, who is controlling, and a man who is trying to murder both him and his unborn child. That is basically the picture that is being painted from Ashley's point of view. But Doug's family is insistent on the fact that that is not who Doug was. While his family did say that Doug had some angry outbursts in his history, he did go to classes for them and got the help that he needed, and he grew from that. Now, one of these outbursts that gets talked about quite frequently is an instance where Doug got so angry that he fired one of his shotguns into the ceiling. And friends of Doug have claimed that Doug self-admittedly said that this was the dumbest thing he had ever done, and that was during his relationship with Ashley. But this incident didn't really seem to hinder the relationship between Ashley and Doug at all, because only 2 days after that did Ashley and Doug have their formal wedding celebration. It was basically like their reception party with their family and friends, and people who went to that said that they seemed to be more in love than ever. Now, Doug was investigated by CPS for this incident as well as evaluated by a psychiatrist, but he was cleared by both of those. Now, Doug's family has also claimed that Ashley is not the woman that she portrays herself to be. They have said that Ashley was also very abusive towards Doug, both psychologically and emotionally. And a big part of that is Ashley being so insistent on the fact that Doug killed his former wife, Renee. Ashley had actually contacted Charleston law enforcement to try and get Renee's body exhumed. She was going to different newspapers and anyone who would listen, telling people that Doug had killed Renee. She even went to Eva on multiple occasions and told her that her dad had killed Renee. And I do want to mention that the police closed Renee's case very quickly after she had died and after the coroner report had come back. The autopsy showed that 75% of Renee's artery was clogged, and there was no evidence whatsoever that showed that Doug killed Renee. He was never considered a suspect. He was never considered a person of interest, and police really never even investigated this case to begin with. So it feels silly to say the case was closed quickly, but it was. Now, after Emerson was born, Ashley also asked the family court to terminate Doug's parental rights pertaining to Emerson, but Doug refused to sign away any of his rights, so the two of them did go to court. They both testified in the trial over Doug's parental rights. Ashley testified just saying how horrible of a person Doug was. She went on about the fact that she believed that she was poisoned, as well as Doug's abuse that she was the recipient of. And Doug testified as well and said that while he did yell and did raise his voice, he was not physically abusive towards Ashley, and she never was afraid of him or never acted as if she was afraid of him. He also adamantly denied ever poisoning Ashley or Renee. He said that that never happened. And the judge in this case, in this family trial, when giving her ruling, the judge did not hold back. Without really saying it, the judge said that Ashley was manipulative. She said that she was able to turn her tears on and off for the courtroom. She also said that there was no evidence whatsoever that Doug had tried to poison Ashley or Renee. And also, Doug had never been arrested for any of the complaints that Ashley had filed against him. I feel like that's important to state as well. There was no evidence to prove that these crimes that Ashley was stating had ever occurred. So because of this, the judge gave Doug immediate access to Emerson and put him in charge of all of her medical decisions, which I think is quite interesting. And Emerson was 6 months old at this time, and she had actually never met Doug up until that point. The two met after that ruling, and people who were there for that reuniting actually said that Ashley's tone had very much changed during this meeting. She seemed to be a lot softer. She very willingly just gave Emerson to Doug, and she seemed that maybe she could want some reconciliation here. And things changed in Doug and Ashley's relationship over the next year. Doug had actually gotten a condo in Florida nearby where Ashley lived, so he could spend more time with both Ashley and Emerson. That meant that him and Ashley were spending more time together as well. And from Doug's perception, he believed that him and Ashley were working to repair their relationship, but that did not seem to be the case from Ashley's perspective. During one of the exchanges of their daughter, when Doug went to go pick up Emerson from Ashley, Doug allegedly saw what appeared to be an engagement ring on Ashley's finger, and this really sent him over the edge. He ended up hiring a private investigator to basically watch Ashley to see if she was seeing someone else. And the private investigator was able to confirm that Ashley was, in fact, seeing another man. So, because of this, in November of 2019, Doug filed for divorce. And after Doug had filed for divorce, the accusations from Ashley's side went rampant. Ashley was accusing Doug of all kinds of things, the worst one being Doug was sexually abusing their daughter, which, just to be clear, there was no evidence of that whatsoever. But only a few months after Doug had filed for divorce, again, Doug and Ashley decided that they were going to work on their relationship. relationship. And ultimately, they decided that they were going to start fresh. They were going to enter into a new chapter of their relationship, and they were going to do so by starting over. And that included moving to a different state. Both Ashley and Doug had decided that they were going to move to Maryland because, again, that's where Ashley was from. And even though they were both going to be living in Maryland together, they decided that they would live separately for the time being while they worked on their relationship. And on the night of the shooting, September 27th, both Doug and Ashley were actually at Ashley's home packing up her things to move off to Maryland. That was the plan. So now with all of this being said, let's get back into the investigation because what police knew up until this point was that on the night of the murder, Ashley and Doug were in her house alone while Ashley's mom took her daughter to the park. They know that at one point in the night, Ashley shot Doug and then proceeded to run over to the neighbor's home with that same gun that she shot him with in her hand and told the neighbor that she shot Doug in self-defense. Now, while police were canvassing the home, they discovered multiple guns inside of it. There was a loaded gun on the shelf in the pantry. There were also two guns in Ashley's bedroom. And police did start to feel like it was a little bit odd that if Ashley was as scared of Doug as she claimed to be, why would she be okay with being left alone with him? If Ashley was truly terrified of Doug, as she had said so many times, why would she encourage her mom to take her daughter to the park so her and Doug could be alone? There were just certain things that left police a little bit confused and left a bit of a question mark. That, alongside of the guns that were throughout the house, it led police to wonder if Ashley was potentially setting up Doug to murder him that night. Doug had no guns and no weapons on him at the time of the murder, and so police had to wonder if this was Ashley's way of finally getting rid of Doug once and for all. And if you're asking why Ashley would want to get rid of Doug, it was very evident from the very beginning that Ashley did not want Doug having access to Emerson. She completely tried to isolate Doug from Emerson, regardless of what you believe happened or didn't happen. That was something that she tried to do over and over and over again. And once she finally got to family court and it was ruled that Doug would have access to Emerson, police wondered if getting rid of Doug, if killing him, was Ashley's way of taking things into her own hands, taking matters into her own hands, and finally getting Doug out of her life for good. Ashley's attorneys had actually told police that Ashley was setting up an escape plan from Doug. Her attorneys claimed that Ashley had gotten a rental car, she had gotten a safe location, and she was planning on traveling with her daughter and her mom to this location, and that she had gotten all of these things that she was putting into place, all of these plans, and these plans were set to be executed the following day on September 28th. But obviously, as we know, these plans never took place because the shooting happened on September 27th, the day prior. Now, 2 months after the murder, in November of 2020, Ashley was arrested and she was charged with the second-degree murder of Doug, to which she pled not guilty. Now, leading up to the trial, there was a lot of media surrounding this case. Doug's daughter Eva was on TikTok and she was making videos, being a voice for her dad and standing up for him. She made videos using dark humor to cope with losing both of her parents, and she posted consistent updates leading up to and during the trial. Now, Eva has always supported her father, Doug, as has Doug's entire side of his family, and they have always advocated for him. Now, Ashley had many supporters as well, including her daughter, Emerson. Now, Emerson was only 6 years old at the time of this trial, and she was really front and center of the campaign of freeing Ashley. She was in the news, she was talking to the media, and because of her age, this sparked a lot of outrage and conflicting opinions because a lot of people thought that she was too young to understand what was going on and that she shouldn't be at the forefront. She shouldn't be holding up the signs and talking to the cameras and being interviewed about her mom's trial when it pertained to murdering her dad. There was a lot of things that people were not fully on board with when it came to how that was executed. Now, the trial began on July 23rd, 2024 in Manatee County, and the prosecutor on this case was Suzanne O'Donnell, and the defense was Neil Taylor. The prosecution argued that Ashley was a mother who did not want Doug to have access to his daughter. In order to do this, they claim that Ashley built up an entire story, painting Doug out to be a bad person, and while they self-admittedly said he was not an angel, he certainly was not a killer or a murderer who killed his ex-wife and was trying to kill her too. The prosecution argued that Ashley fabricated the abuse allegations in an attempt to have sole custody of her daughter, and when that didn't work, she decided that she needed to kill him. Now, there is one thing I want to note about the coroner who testified in this case, and they talked about the locations in which Doug was shot. Like I said, he was shot in his leg as well as the side of his arm, and that indicated to both the coroner and detectives that more than likely Doug's body was turned away from Ashley, and that meant that the shot could have either come out of nowhere, he wasn't expecting it, or that he was trying to run away from Ashley, which contradicts her self-defense argument. Now, as far as the defense goes, they obviously argued that Ashley was a victim of domestic violence and she acted in self-defense on the night of September 27th. Now, Ashley did testify in her trial, and this was the first time ever that anyone had heard Ashley's side of the story pertaining to what happened on the night of Doug's killing, because again, she never spoke to police, she didn't speak to the media, she didn't speak to anyone about what happened. And so this was the first time anyone was going to hear her side of the story. Ashley stated that on September 27th, her and Doug were packing for their move to Maryland. Ashley said that Doug began getting very agitated when she suggested that the two should live separately, which this is something that is contradicting quite a bit because people who knew Doug said that that was already decided on. They were going to live separately anyways. But Ashley said that when she brought this up, he was getting more and more angry. So Ashley claims that she tried to change the subject, but when that didn't work, Doug then approached her and smacked her across her face. Ashley said afterwards she ran inside, trying to get to safety, but Doug was chasing after her. She then ran to her bedroom where one of her guns were. She grabbed the gun and said that she held it in front of her and told Doug to stop. She said at this point, Doug then got into what she called a fighting stance. She said that he turned his body sideways into a fighting stance, which if that were to be true, that also could explain why Doug was shot in the side of his arm. But Ashley is saying that he turned sideways into a fighting stance and began moving his arms and hands around. And Ashley then claims that he then tried to lunge towards her. And when that happened, Ashley pulled the trigger. Ashley said that she shot Doug because she was scared and thought he was going to kill her. Ashley on the stand was hysterically crying, talking about how horrible she felt about what she did and that she killed the father of her child. She was in hysterics on the stand. Now, the defense also brought forth a text message that Ashley claimed to have found on an old cell phone of Doug's that came from Renee. Now, in this text message, again, if this is true, Renee said in this text, quote, "I am deeply disappointed that you distorted the truth about who you really were when I married you. I loved you through finding out you really weren't what you pretended to be. You kicking me so hard on New Year's Eve on our honeymoon because you were having trouble functioning in certain areas. You holding a gun to your head twice in my home," end quote. Now, obviously, this text supports Ashley's claims that Doug was abusive. This would very well help her argument. Now, during the cross-examination, when the prosecution questioned Ashley, Ashley admitted that Doug never punched, kicked, or choked her. The prosecution said in their closing arguments that Ashley's testimony does not match Doug's injuries. The prosecution really emphasized that domestic violence is a very, very, very real thing, but Ashley was not a victim of it. After both sides had rested, both the prosecution and the defense, the jury deliberated for 7 hours and they found Ashley guilty of manslaughter. Now, again, Ashley was initially charged with second-degree murder, so this is a lesser charge. And what this means is that the jury was basically saying that they didn't believe that the shooting was premeditated, but they also did not think that the shooting was justified. So that's a really interesting stance to look at it from. It's a really interesting way to think from the jury's perspective. That is what they believe. They don't believe that Ashley planned this out, but they don't believe that Ashley was justified in killing Doug as an act of self-defense. Ashley was sentenced to 20 years in prison, followed by 10 years of probation. So she will be in prison for quite some time. But that, you guys, is this case. And again, I'm so curious to hear what you have to say about it. What do you believe when it comes to Ashley and Doug's relationship? Do you believe Ashley? Do you believe Doug? Do you think that there's a little bit of truth in both of their stories? What do you think? Do you think Ashley acted in self-defense? Let me know in the comments below. But with that being said, you guys, it's going to be all for me today. Thank you so much for tuning in to another episode of Killer Instinct. Again, if you're new here, hi, my name is Savannah and I am your host of Killer Instinct. And make sure you go ahead and hit that subscribe button if you haven't already. That way you never miss an episode. We post weekly here on the podcast every single Wednesday. You're not going to want to miss it. I will be back next week with a brand new one for you guys. And until then, stay safe. Bye, guys.